What if this year was the year that you finally achieved all of the goals that you had in mind? If this was the year that you were able to achieve and work on anything significant that made a difference to you? Now, I'm very lucky and very privileged in that I was going back over my yearly goals and my weekly goals, and almost without fail, every year, the main goals that I have get checked off. A lot of you won't know this, but I restarted my business and I basically gave up like a $400,000 to $500,000 a year coaching business because it wasn't making me happy. So I started from scratch. And I'm happy to say that every year since then, we've continued to grow the company and grow the business. And I'm extremely happy with where we are. And so I want to share with you the method that I use to get those kind of results and to plan goals. And we are going to be actually planning in this. And then I also want to share with you why entrepreneurs and business owners struggle to get the results they want and struggle to hit the goals that they want. And I wish it had something to do with skills or experience, but it's got nothing to do with that. And I'm going to walk you through that. So, there we go. I've got back into StreamYard, so I'm working on, here we go, excellent. So the first things first, if you head over to go.sellyourservice.co.uk/goals, you can actually get access to the worksheet. I'll see if I can make the whiteboard that we're going to use available as well. It's basically a Google Doc. There's nothing too spectacular about it, but we are going to go through that in a second. But what I want to explain to you is setting goals is one thing, but all too often, and I don't know if you're the same, for years, what I would do is I would start my year, like over here. And then by the time the end of the year came around, I had really clear objectives that I wanted to work towards. And I found that by sort of halfway, they had kind of gone askew. Some of them I hadn't even like contemplated. And maybe one of them I had accomplished. But by this point, number 4 had come along that I'd started working on. Number 5 came here and that took like absolute priority. Number 6 we worked on for a bit and then it stopped very, very quickly. And this always really frustrated me for a long time. And what I learned is that the reason people don't hit their goals has got nothing to do with their skills. It's got nothing to do with their experience. It's got nothing to do with their background. It's got nothing to do with how much money they've got. It's because they don't know the rules. So whenever my wife and I have a conversation, the only types of conversations that are really problematic are problems about conflict, and not necessarily conflict between my wife and I, but it might be something like work has been particularly stressful for her, or maybe I've had a bit of a problem with sponsors or, software or the team. I'm actually very lucky. My team are phenomenal. And every single time, whenever we have a problem, we remind ourselves and we say, what are the rules? And whenever we say this, it recenters us. And in my opinion, people don't get what they want, not because they aren't working hard enough, not because they aren't productive, not because they aren't focused. It's because they don't know the rules. And the first rule, the most important rule of all, the rule to end all rules, is know what you want. So, to give a bit of context, a while back, in 2021, I was diagnosed with cancer. I'm happy to say I'm cancer-free now. And I had to go through chemotherapy. I had 4 rounds of surgery and 1 or 2 rounds of chemotherapy, depending on sort of how you measure it. And the day I had to go into chemotherapy, my wife got called into a meeting with the company that she worked with at the time, and they were like, hey, just to let you know, we're making you redundant. And she was like, this is really, really good news on the day that I now need to start taking care of my husband for a few months. Anyway, long story short is it ended up in a bit of a legal debacle. And I had a lot of free time on my hands because I sure as hell wasn't doing any work. And I remember us thinking, well, they haven't done this a particularly good way. The redundancy hasn't worked out particularly well. And I remember asking her, what do you want? And she came back and she said, I want a fair redundancy. I think I've been kind of screwed over here. It's like, great. So what we want is fair redundancy. Now, the problem is that we are way too concerned with either what other people want or what we think we should want or what we think other people want for us. For me, there was a period in my life where I was, like I was saying, I was building this big coaching company. We had books, we had speaking tours, we had all this kind of stuff. And I realized I was miserable. We were actually sat in our hotel room in Mexico. And I remember sitting on the bed thinking, this is like, we're making more money than ever. We've got a bigger team than ever. So why am I not happy? Because I seem to be having everything that everyone wants. Like I'm being paid to travel the world and speak at these events. And Olivia said to me, what are the rules? Number one, know what you want. And I was like, I don't really know. And that's a problem. If you don't know what you want, you need to spend way more time knowing what you want. And we are going to cover that in this a little bit. The second rule, this is critical. Okay, this is critical, is make sure that they know what you want. They in inverted commas. When my wife was going through redundancy, she sat down with them and they said, okay, let's have a conversation about how we're going with this. And she sat down and said, I want a fair redundancy. She actually went specific, and we'll talk all about this. I'll talk all about the specificities, and trust me, this is going to be an incredibly clear plan for you. And what fair redundancy looked like to her was a certain size payout that we had worked out. It was a certain amount of bonus. It was a certain amount of extras. Basically, we figured out exactly bullet point by bullet point what we want. If you go into any situation, as in the year coming ahead, the year 2025, the year 2026, whatever it is, and you have a specific outline of what you want to achieve, you have already done 90% of the work, because most people will not spend the time figuring out what it is that they want. They will not sit down and work out, I want to make this much money, I want to have this many customers. Now, the second part is make sure they know what you want. Now, this could be your family, your friends, your team, your colleagues, your customers, your network, your peers. In my wife's case, it was her management. And she sat down with them and she said, I want this much money, I want this much in bonuses, I want this many extras, and I want this to happen to my job. And at first, they laughed at her. But what's incredible, and I promise you, if you do this, I promise you, you will literally see results instantaneously. If you know what you want and you can get them to say what you want, even if they don't agree with you, even if they laugh at you, even if they judge you for it or think you're an idiot for it, if you can get them to repeat back what you want, you have already won. When I turned around to my team, I said, I don't want us to do coaching anymore. And of course, they were a little bit like, well, does this affect our jobs? And for some of them, frankly, it did, unfortunately. And I remember that two of them who are still with me today said, okay, well, what are we doing? What do you want? I said, I want to build a YouTube company. I want to sell software. I want to work less. I want to publish more content. I want to have more fun. And they were able to repeat back to me, Mike wants to shut down the coaching company, not run any more coaching calls, run a YouTube company, and sell software that way. If you know what you want and you can make sure that they know what you want, I guarantee you're 95% of the way there. Anytime you have conflict, anytime you have a problem where you're like, I just don't know how I'm going to solve this, ask yourself, what are the rules? First of all, what do I want? Secondly, do they know what I want? And you can flip this as well. What do they want? And do you know what they want? And the third point, and this is critical because this is where people fall down. Do not fear rejection, ridicule, judgment, or vulnerability. And to prove to you, this is what's on the post-it note in front of me. Those are the rules. Number 1, know what you want. Number 2, make sure they know what you want. Whenever I have a conversation with a new partner who comes on board and they say, hey, we want to do your editing for you, or we want to sponsor you, or we want to create content with you, or whatever it is, right? Okay, fantastic. Tell me what I want. And they go, what? I go, right, tell me what I want. If you're proposing a partnership, tell me what I want. And they never know because they haven't asked. And it makes me realize, do I want to work with this person? So number 1, know what you want. Critical, without question, the most important thing. We'll talk about this in a second. I'm getting ahead of myself. Number 2, make sure they know what you want. Anyone you're having a conversation with, they need to know what you want. Number 3, do not fear rejection, ridicule, judgment, or being seen as vulnerable. If it turns out, and this is what happened in 2022, this is what happened to me. We got January to December. We think for some reason, well, I need to have my goals figured out like by January so I can continue working on them. And by the time I reach December, it's all done. This is supposed to be a checkered flag. I'm still figuring out, this is Concepts, by the way. The app is called Concepts I'm using. And we think that there's this kind of linear progress towards that. What I had to do in 2022 was I had to figure out, I actually spent probably 9 to 10 months figuring out what it is that I wanted. Because I had everything that everyone else told me I wanted. I had cars that were being paid for. I had like speaking opportunities. I was being paid to travel the world. I had a big coaching company. We had a high, revenue. In all truth, the business wasn't massively profitable, which is probably partly the problem. Everyone knew me. I had book deals and stuff. Everyone told me that's what I should want. And so I spent about 9-10 months. It was actually September through to probably about December, funnily enough. No, that can't be right. It must have been later. Maybe it was my birthday, around my birthday, back to June. So it was like September 22 to about June 23, figuring out what I wanted. And I'm going to go through the process of how I went through that, okay? What you need to understand is that most people will come up with 50, 60, 70 goals, most of which aren't really things they wanted. And I realized what I actually want is I don't ever want to have a call with anybody else ever again. The thing that I love about my business more than anything is that today, for example, we had a lot of windy storms a few weeks ago. Had to go over to my mother and father-in-law's house. They live in this beautiful cottage out in the countryside. We had to do a lot of work for them. And I can just do that. I could just say, I actually don't need to jump on any calls. That's what I wanted. If you've ever had a dog, I know it's going to sound like I'm going off ball, but if you've ever had a dog, one of the things that we learned when we got our dog in puppy training classes is that everyone says, I don't want my dog on the couch. This is a couch, by the way. It's a sofa. It's a front-on view of the sofa. And everyone says, I don't want my dog on the couch. And our trainer said to us, okay, you can't teach a dog what not to do. What do you want the dog to do? And it completely reframed our training. I was like, I want her to stay like by our feet the whole time, where she's super happy and she's wagging her little tail backwards and forwards. They were great. Next time she's on the floor, reward her. And sure enough, our dog doesn't jump on the couch. She stays down by her feet, she's happy, and that's where she hangs out. We can't train someone to not do something. We can only train them to do something. So all too often when we say, I don't want calls, okay, great. What do you want your day to look like? I want my day to be 8 hours of uninterrupted time that I don't have to have a, see, that's even then, that's a don't. I want my day to have 8 hours of uninterrupted time filled with tasks that I think are meaningful. Great. That was one thing. I was like, great, that's one thing we can start with. Secondly, I want to be able to increase the amount of money that I earn without increasing the amount of time that I invest in the business. Okay, great. And again, it's scary because some people, when you share this with them, they're going to say, that's kind of dumb. That sounds ridiculous. You don't want to work. Don't fear judgment, failure, ridicule, or vulnerability. So here's what we're going to do. If you had to spend most of your year figuring out what you want, you will be in a better position than almost everybody else who's doing their goal setting. And the second thing we're going to do is we're going to make sure they know what you want. So here's what we're going to do. We are going to jump into our workbook. And like I said, if you head over to go.sellyourservice.co.uk/goals, you should be able to, that should just get sent straight through to your email. And you can download this worksheet. Like I said, it's a Google Doc. The hardest thing in the world to do is to formulate a goal that works for you. Because first of all, you need to know what that goal is. And so there's two parts to this exercise. I learned this from a guy called Jim Rohn. I think Brian Tracy teaches this as well. There's just like a few notes here. Here's what I want you to do. If you go up to the top left, click on File, click on Make a Copy. That will allow you to make a copy that you can then use on your own like worksheet or whatever. You don't like, this is just a way to figure it out, right? Like you can absolutely do this in your own way. You can use paper. I use Post-it notes. That's what mine is. And here's what we're going to do. I need you to think about the biggest problem or roadblock in your life right now that if you eliminated would make all of your other problems easier or disappear or irrelevant. It's basically a wish list. What do you want to see happen in 2025? And it's pretty simple. All we're going to do is we're going to come down here. I'm going to put my name in here. The year is 2025. And what is the first thing that I want to see happen? I would love $10,000 a month in passive recurring revenue. And we'll leave it at that. Now, what makes this different and why this is so important? And by the way, if you ever come across like the top athletes of the world, the top entrepreneurs, people like top authors, they all do this. They spend an enormous amount of time writing out and figuring out their goals. The difference is how they write them out. You need to start writing it out as if this is what you live like now. If you were to write out your height, I am, 182 centimeters, which is 6 foot. 6 foot internet height, so it probably means closer to 5'10", right? You are that. That is an irrefutable fact. But too many people write their goal as, I want to be 6 foot. And that's just not the way it works. You have to be able to write it out in what we call the present tense. So this changes from $10,000 a month recurring revenue, passive recurring revenue, to I earn $10,000 a month in passive recurring revenue. Now, what makes it more powerful is when it's time bound. And I would say a month or every 30 days. And then I want to get specific about it. And I'll say, okay, from high level affiliate payments. Notice how this process is already beginning to restructure what you want. The reason that this process is so powerful and the reason it's so important is because when you go through this and it writes out, I drive a brand new M Series BMW with no monthly payments. BWM. Reading that now, would I connect to that? This is why writing out is so important. And like I said, this is so important because if we take something like our positioning over here, most people, as I've mentioned, go after what they think other people should want. This is you. This is others. And we go, yeah, I should want a BMW. I should want to travel, right? I should want to be, what is it? What's the I don't know, dumb award thing? It's fine if you've got it. The 2 Comma Club Award, right? And all of this, when you write it out as, I have a 2 Comma Club Award because of a marketing funnel and a campaign that I've put out, you say, is that actually what I want? If it's not, absolutely there's no point going for it. That is why it's so important. And what's funny is that when you go through the process and you say, I want you to write out 10 goals, when you tell people to be specific like this and write out things that are specific and personal to you and time-bound and written in the present tense, and they're positive, they are things that you are doing, immediately people's entire perception of what a goal is changes. And they go, actually, this is really difficult. Yes, it is. It's extremely difficult. Now, there's no reason why you can't write out 10 things that are going to just like blow your mind. In my opinion, people struggle writing one thing that blows their mind. Because as I mentioned, if you can get down one goal, we call it the big domino, right? In your life, you've got all these little dominoes. And these are all problems. These are all like little roadblocks that you essentially want to get out of the way in order for you, if you're here, and this is the finish, you're trying essentially to like reach over that way. If there was one huge domino that you could push over that would flatten all of the other dominoes and make all of the other dominoes irrelevant and easier, or just make them disappear entirely, that's the goal that you should be working towards. But for the sake of this exercise, I want you to write out, what do you want to see happen in 2025? Write it out in the present tense, get specific with dates, amounts, times, locations, and I want you to write down 10 goals. And here's where the difficult part is. You see, in my experience, entrepreneurs never starve to death, all right? Entrepreneurs have a problem with drowning. All too often, we take on too many goals, not we don't have enough goals. And what's very difficult for people is to pick a goal that matters to them. And when you tell someone, I want you to pick one goal that matters to you, they'll immediately say, oh yeah, but there's loads of other priorities. If you've got loads of priorities, you haven't got any priorities. And if I had to pick one thing, then I would pick the thing that would make the rest of my life easy as possible. And so when I look at the types of goals that I'm writing out, would driving a slightly different car make things better? Maybe. It wouldn't be a huge change to my life. So maybe another one is, I have a full-time team of 5 people who take care of all our social media and content and leave me to focus solely on thinking of great ideas. I want to have 10 goals written out that are specific. They're personal to me, like they make sense to me. They're time bound. And then this is the difficult part. I'm going to look at 5 of them and I'm going to eliminate 5 of them. I'm going to say I'm not going to work on these. I'm literally going to scrub them out. I think I can format text like this. Let's find out. Alt-Shift-5, there we go. Although there isn't anything in there. And so I'm left with 5 more goals. So we've already cut down to 50%. And obviously this is something that you'll want to do in your own time. And then I'm going to want to take 3 more of those goals and I'm going to eliminate 3 more of them. which is going to leave me with 2 more goals. And I'm going to cut down to just 1 more. So I'll eliminate 1 more of these goals. And I should be left with 1 specific, personal, time-bound, present tense, positive goal. You'll hear a ton of people talk about this method. They'll say, write out everything that you want to do. Write out everything you want to accomplish. And then go through it and figure out which is the most important, which would make the biggest difference in your life. Circle that, cross all the others out. Everything else is a distraction. Here's the second part. As someone who sells training and sells processes and programs, hey guys, I can see, by the way, some of you who have bought that. You don't need to buy as much of that stuff as you think. I would argue you probably don't need to buy any of it. You probably know a huge amount that you would be able to work on. And I can prove it to you. We then take our goal. And by the way, things like make $1 million, and this is personal goal. These are the stuff that matters. Like my goal for 2021 was beat cancer. It was to be, specifically, I think it was to be told I was in the early stages of remission and to have completed chemotherapy without finding any more, I think it's like cancer markers in my blood throughout the rest of 2021 and 2022. That was literally it. The money was irrelevant at that point, right? I was not thinking about the money. So if your goal is to lose weight or whatever, or to, live a happier life, great. It's the specificity. It's making it personal. Instead, rewriting it in 2025, I've made $1 million in sales and cash collected through selling courses or premium courses to 1,000 people for $1,000. That is a completely different goal to make 1 million. The difference is that lots of people will say, I want to do this, and I want to do this, and I want to do this, and I want to do this. Wrong. You need to figure out, what do you want, so you can tell people what you want. And so we take our goal. Now, let's take this one, for example. This is last year's one, but it'll do. Because I haven't gone through this process myself for 2025 yet. Here's the kicker, and you might need to go back and start again. That's why if you have to spend the next 10 months figuring out what your goal is, that is a better use of your time than just going after anything. Does my goal pass? First of all, can I point to the problem? Is there a dashboard or some kind of method for me to be able to physically point to my current problem? If I looked at something like, I earn $10,000 a month passive recurring revenue, is there a dashboard I can go to that currently says you only earn $1,000 a month? Maybe. I know where it is. For my case, it would be our affiliate dashboard and Stripe. I can physically point to where the problem is. If you can't physically point to where the problem is, maybe it's your calendar, maybe it's your scales, maybe it's your driveway, maybe it's your bank account, maybe it's your text message chains. You need to be able to point to the problem. Is it actionable and specific? Is it something that for you will care about for the next year? S, scoreboard proof. Is there then a tool or a dashboard to be able to track and confirm your process? In some cases, it might be I can physically see the car on my driveway. It might be if I look down on the scales, I've clearly lost weight. It might be if I look at my bank account, there is $1 million there sitting there as cash. And then this is the most important piece. Is this the problem or goal that is so valuable that if I reach it, my life will be measurably better and all of my other goals and problems will actually seem easier or irrelevant, or they'll disappear? If your goal passes all of these, that's when we can move on to the second piece. I want you to write out a list of everything that needs to happen. What do you need to do? What do you need to see? What do you need to work on? It might be 5 things. It might be 8 things. It might be 100 things. That's irrelevant. You might say, well, first of all, let's say I need to earn $10,000 a month. Let's say I was only earning 1,000. So I basically need to increase sales by $9,000, which means, again, let's say that is I don't know, 100 customers. Find 100 new customers. Okay, that means I'm probably going to need an email database of over 2,000 people. Okay, well, that means that I'm going to need to create content to drive traffic. And what I do is I write out everything that needs to happen. Some of them are going to be milestones. I personally don't write, let's hit 1,000 a month, then 2,000, then 3,000. I don't write that. I break it down in terms of, well, that would be 200 customers at whatever that is, 500 a month or something along those lines, where I would need to, in order to be able to hit that, which means I would need this many new customers. I would need this many new leads. I'll need a sales page with a video sales letter. That'd be useful. I'll need an email onboarding. And I'll write out everything that needs to happen. And the second thing that we do is I'll then write out, okay, is this a daily task? Or does this just need to happen once? Is it daily? Is it weekly? Is it monthly? Or is it something that just needs to happen once? This is just something that needs to happen once. This is just something that needs to happen once. An email database of over 2,000 people, well, the milestone is once. But that would then mean 2,000 people. Well, let's say it's 3,000 to make the maths easier. That's 10 people a day on the email list. So that's a daily goal. Creating new content to drive traffic, that's probably going to be something you need to do that's daily. And it's really simple. We just figure out, well, what's the first thing I need to do? So that's when I then like to rewrite them in order of priority. And I have this. This is like how I run my life, basically. First of all, do I know what I want? If I don't know what I want, I will spend way more time. Have you ever heard that people who are like, everyone should meditate, all right? Everyone should be meditating. And if you're busy, you should be meditating for 2 hours. I think it's like everyone should spend 45 minutes a day meditating. And if you're extremely busy, you should spend 2 hours. What they really mean by that is you should spend more time figuring out what it is that you actually want, because getting it is exponentially easier when you know what you want. Because when you know what you want, you can tell other people what you want. And when you can tell other people what you want, everything happens much faster. Way faster. You should be applying this to a mini scale and a huge macro scale. And so then we have this list of all the things that you need to be doing daily, weekly, monthly, yearly, one-off milestones that need to get done to hit that goal. And if you think, I just don't know if that goal would make a big difference, then start again. Work on something bigger. People will always, to be honest, people massively overestimate what they can do within a year. That's fine. In my opinion, that just comes down to practice. If you figure out and get good at figuring out what it is that you want, that's what matters. The problem is no one has ever said, oh, I didn't hit my goals because I was too disciplined. All right. What happens at the start of the year, everyone goes, okay, I've got these 10 goals. And as we stated, you then go forward and number 7 comes out here and number 8, and some of them take priority and some of them drop off immediately and some of them drop off faster and some of them are easier and some of them never seem to happen. And you get to December and you think, why the hell is it? Forget all of that. If you have thought, I've tried every trick in the book, I'll guarantee you haven't tried focusing on one thing. Just doing one goal and making that your priority. Everything else takes a backseat. And it's tough. I've had to turn down a lot of opportunities this year. A lot. The last 2 years. But now we sit on the fact that I have other people managing my money for me now. And at the time, everyone was like, that's insane, mate. You're giving up this crazy amount of money. Yeah, but I'm beholden to no one. Because 1, I knew what I wanted. And 2, other people could tell me what I want. I made sure everyone else was able to tell me what I want. Guys, head over to go.sellyourservice.co.uk/goals if